Hello and welcome to the Learning Love podcast. I'm Dr. Mark A. Hicks, author of the book Learning Love. It is possible to build the healthy, happy, thriving relationships you have always wanted. So let's spend some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. And today's question is a complicated one. It's a difficult one. What do we do when we love someone, but our lives take us in different directions? We have a strong emotional attachment, but we want different things in life. We find ourselves drifting in different directions. This can happen in romantic relationships. It can happen in families. It may happen with your job. Maybe you love your job. You love your coworkers. You feel a strong sense that this has been a good job for you for a long time, but you're kind of developing in a different way. You're kind of feeling like you need something different or something more or something in your life that is not this job anymore. And that can be a really tough decision. What happens when we love someone or we love a job, we love our family, but our life takes us in different directions? A lot of times when I raise these questions, I try to give some direction, some strategy that you can put in place to deal with that. I'm going to have to take a different approach today because there is no one-size-fits-all guidance that can be given in this situation. These are deeply, deeply personal kinds of decisions that have to be made, and you have to live with the consequences. If you stay in a relationship, in your family, in your job, the way it has been, then there could be a sense of you are giving up the future that you might want and could have if you left that job, or if you sort of pulled away from your family, or if you did not pursue that romantic relationship. That's maybe a life that you wanted that you're giving up in order to hold on to what you have. At the same time, if you give up these things, it is a huge risk. It is very scary to pursue something in life, to move a different direction because you really feel strongly that's where you need to go. And yet you may not be as close to your family. Maybe there's some friends that are left behind. Maybe a romantic relationship is left behind. Maybe you have to leave a job. When you love someone or you love something like a job, yet it doesn't seem to fit into your future because you're moving a different direction, this gets really difficult and vastly complicated, and there's a lot of emotional struggle. And so what I want to do today is sort of lay the landscape. I want to describe the structure that can be used to make these decisions, but ultimately that decision is going to be very personal because only you can live with the consequences. No one can tell you what to do in this case, but there is some structure and some wisdom that can be brought into that decision-making process. And so that's what I want to bring today. First of all, let's understand what we're dealing with. What happens if we love someone, but our life is moving in a different direction? I think we're asking that the wrong way. We're acting like there is love for someone on one side and life on the other side, and that's really not true. Life and love go together. They are part of the same. You can't really separate life and love. These are unified elements of life. What we are dealing with when we say we're moving in a different direction is a practical question. What are our ambitions? What do we want out of life? What are our core values? All these questions come into play when we're asking that question, what do we want of life? Where are we going in our life? And the emotional attachment that we have to someone is not separate from that. They are both part of love. In my book, Learning Love, I talk about the 5 components of love. Emotional commitment and emotional attachment is one of those components. I listed in the book as the second component. The 5 components are not listed in any particular order. One's not more important than the other, but I put them in an order because you have to talk about them in some kind of order. So I list emotion as the second component of love. And that is what we often think about as love. Those emotional feelings we have for someone, that emotional attachment, that emotional connection that we have, we think about that as love. It is, it's part of love, it's one component of love, but it's only one. The third component of love is practicality. Practicality is part of love as well. Practicality is how we live life together. It's how we live well together. It's how we walk through life as a couple or as a family or as friends or as co-workers and community. It's how we live life together. And that is as much of love as the emotional commitment and the emotional attachment that we have. Those emotional bonds are just as important as the practical side of life, and the practical side of life is just as important as the emotions. One is not more important than the other. One sort of balances the other out. What I often say is emotion brings us together, practicality keeps us together. Living life in a practical way, making wise choices, understanding how to live well together is what keeps us together in a relationship. And that's where these life issues start to fall, is on the practical side. What do we want out of life? What do we want to do? Where do we see our life going? How can we support our partner and at the same time pursue our own dreams? How can we live out our life together in a healthy, happy way, supporting each other's dreams and ambitions, while at the same time understanding that we can't let those tear us apart. We have to find a way to live life together if we're going to choose to be together and keep those emotional attachments strong. When we ask the question, what if we love someone but we want different things in life? What we are really saying is, what happens when two components of love aren't really working together very well? What if we have the emotional side of love, but we're struggling on the practical side? Our life ambitions and goals just aren't matching up. This happens a lot, particularly as people get older and dealing with their family. Yes, we want to be close to our parents and our siblings. We want to have that healthy, happy, thriving family life. And yet, sometimes we also have ambitions of jobs that may take us away from our hometown, maybe far away. We have schedules that don't necessarily allow us to get to all the family functions. We want to be close to the family. We have an emotional bond, and yet we have the practical side of the life ambitions and goals and things that are fulfilling to us that may pull us away from that time with family. This is really common struggle. And so what we have to do is understand these are both aspects of love. One is not love and the other some separate thing of life. They are both aspects of love, because when we love someone, it is practical. It's not just emotional. It is emotional. We don't forget that. We don't leave that by the wayside. But we also understand that love is practical. We have to live together well. And so it becomes this balancing act of how do we stay connected emotionally and at the same time pursue these elements of life that are fulfilling, the things that we feel called to, the things that we need in our life, pursuing our values, holding to our values, and at the same time keeping our emotional connections. Now, the reality is, the sad reality, sometimes it just can't work. There's those stories that we've all heard, and maybe you've lived this, that you were dating someone, you were in love, you talked about a life together, but as you talked about that life together, you realized you had different values. You had different ambitions and dreams. Maybe one person wants to have lots of kids, have a whole house full of kids, while the other person really wants to focus on a career and not sure they even want to have children. That can be a real deal breaker in a relationship. And while you may feel a very strong emotional bond to someone, that practical side of love may not work for you. You just can't practically put it together that you can have a life you're both happy with. That's a sad reality. And when that happens, and if the relationship goes by the wayside because of that, then we're to the first component of love, which is grief. People often are surprised when I list grief as the first component of love. But the reason for that is that life is hard. It's full of these very difficult, complex issues. And sometimes things are not going to work out the way we had hoped. And when that happens, we have to be able to have a comeback story. We can't fall into a place where we think love isn't real, love is not for us, we can't have healthy relationships. That's not the place to go to. What we do is we grieve that loss, we grieve that hardship, and we come to a place that we understand that love is still out there for us, that we can still have relationships. Maybe we couldn't have a relationship with that one romantic partner because of the differences in our life. We grieve that loss, but we come back to a place that we understand there are other people that may share those values, share these types of ambitions, that will be a more well-rounded love for us, not just an emotional attachment, as important as that is, but also be able to live life practically, in a practical way, together in a fulfilling way. Maybe in our family, we have to grieve that we're not going to be as close to them as we once were. We have to come through that grief process and understand this is a different phase of life, and that's okay. Even though it hurts, it's okay to move to a different phase. We grieve the past, the loss of that old phase, that previous phase of life that we love so much, being so close to our family, and understand this is a new phase, that we can enjoy that as well, and still have a relationship with our family, still have an emotional attachment, but just not the same way as it was. That is a loss. That will take some adjustment. We can grieve that loss and then come to a place that we understand we can still have an emotional attachment and also go into this new phase, this practical phase of keeping true to our core values, our pursuits of life, the things that we really, truly want in life. So love is more complex than just the emotional attachment. It also has a practical side, and sometimes there will be grief along the way that is our comeback story to living a life of love. And so don't think that you are giving up love because life sometimes moves you to a new phase, that life sometimes closes one door so that you can open another. That's not the end of love. That is part of love, practicality, being demonstrated in your life, that you understand there is a practical side to love as well, living life well together. And if you give that up just for the emotional side, it tends to cause a lot of problems. If you do away with the emotional side and you just focus on the practical, that causes a lot of problems. We need both. We need to understand that, yes, life is emotional, love is emotional, but it's also practical. And when those things don't go together and the relationship has to change in some way, that will cause a grief process, and grief is a component of love as well. Grief is our comeback story in our story of love, in our life of love. It's our way back into relationships of love when there are hardships along the way. And so if you're in a place, or if you know someone who is in a place where they are dealing with this very difficult decision, understand it's okay for it to be a really difficult decision. It's not going to be easy. And you are not failing because you feel a little overwhelmed or a lot overwhelmed in this. It's tough. This is a very complex issue because these are two real components of love that are both vastly important. The emotional connection and the practical realities of life have to work together for the fullness of love. And when they just can't, sometimes those relationships need to change. And that can cause a grief process. And when it does, go through that grief process in order to come back to that place where you can find the relationships that you truly want in your life. This is the structure and the understanding of what you're dealing with, but ultimately, the decision has to be yours because these are consequences that are big. It does cause a grief process when these relationships change. And so make these decisions for yourself. Don't let anyone tell you what you need to do, but understand the structure of emotion and practicality and how grief can be the comeback when those things don't go together very well. Understanding these components of love can put you in a place of making a wise decision, not an easy one, but a wise decision that can carry you forward in your life of love. It's tough, it's complex, definitely not easy, but there is a structure to understand what you're dealing with and make a wise decision. So that's my thoughts this week on how you can build a life of love that you deserve. As always, I hope you'll go to my website and order my book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters and Healthy Relationships That Last. It's on my website, markahicks.com. I also want to thank my producer, Abby Graves of Abby Graves Production, and thank you so much to all of you for listening. Until next week, love well, everyone.